I realized that we have so many new members, and we've started this so long ago. I forget that sometimes. This movement started 10 years ago, and I started doing these lives a few years ago, and we've had people that have joined in the last few months, and sometimes I forget that they haven't seen all the other videos, and so I just jump into something and people are lost or they're confused or the ideas are so radical and out there, they want to connect them to everything else. So recently I just published a new book. I'm going to be talking about that tonight. It's called Power. It's the 4th book in the series. So if you're just jumping in and I'm talking about power, there's so much missing. 2/3 of the movement of the talks are missing. And so I just want to get you up to speed tonight. I want to really show you what the Raising Children for Greatness is about. I want you to believe in it. I want you to understand really what's going on. And I want you to join. I want you to join our movement. I'm going to fix this light. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why. It's so weird, the lighting tonight. Probably turned down it on my phone. Okay. So that's what I want to do tonight. I've written 4 books. I said there's going to be 5 books in the Art of Raising Children for Greatness series, but there's 4 now. And these 4 are basically all that you need to give your children an elite education that rivals the best prep schools in the country. If you're just new and you think, well, what are the prep schools and what is he talking about? That's what I'm going to go through tonight. I've got several categories, and it's kind of related to the books here. And my goal is just to get you up to speed tonight. So first of all, when this movement that we talk about, even though we run Blue Manor Academy is the academy, but the movement is the Raising Children for Greatness. And that's not just some generic slogan that we coined out of thin air. It has nothing to do with the MAGA stuff. Okay, we were saying greatness before him. We're talking about educating children in the mold of the elite prep schools, which you'll find out what that means in a minute, and the old aristocracy. So the nobles, the kings, the royalty of old, they had these young children, and sometimes, if it's a king, the little prince is going to be a future king. And we tend to think these children were probably pampered because we're democratic these days, and we imagine every king is a tyrant and he was a pampered wimp as a child. So we kind of rejected all that. But that wasn't the case. The king knew that after he died, this boy or prince, however old, would rule the nation. And if he didn't do well, he could lose his head. And there were many other highly trained individuals in the kingdom, nobles, very powerful people that coveted that throne. And so the prince had to be squared away. He had to be strong. He had to be courageous. Everything was on his shoulders. And so we look back at that model. How did they raise those children for greatness? How did they raise those princes to rule the nations? And we want to tap back into that because that's been lost with the kind of democratic education system in the world that we live in today. But before that, you have to understand what has happened to education. Because so many Americans, and this is what this book is. This book right here. It's a big fat book. There's 2 fat books, okay? One is Power that I just wrote. It's 400 pages. And this is more than 400 pages, called Revealing School. You have to understand what school is. You were told that back in the day, the common people, they couldn't get an education. The elites, the powerful kings and all that stuff, they kept everybody ignorant, and especially women couldn't go to school. They didn't know how to read. You've been taught that. The kids were all working in coal mines because their parents didn't care about them. But thankfully, the government, the socialistic government, stepped in and created this thing called public schooling. And it was free, so it's super benevolent. They just take it from our taxes. They make us pay for it. It's compulsory because they care about us so much that they make our children go get a good education because parents don't care. Parents would just have them in the coal mines. But thank goodness the socialist government stepped in and compelled us to send our children to school so they can become bright and intelligent and hold the leaders accountable in this democracy. And that's kind of the myth that we grew up in. And that was my opinion of school and everybody's opinion of school. They teach that at school, that myth. Quite to the contrary. Before the age of public school, you actually had a higher standard of learning. I think in Massachusetts, that was the first state to demand compulsory education. They had a 97% literacy rate, including indentured servants and stuff. Very high literacy rate. And it was a higher standard, by the way. Like the way they measured literacy. Go look at how they measured literacy back then. The books that they read, you couldn't even almost read them. The primer, I'm like, stumbling over the words. This is what they taught to little kids back then. That was considered literacy. You look at the high standard then, and today it's so low. And even then, in Massachusetts, I think it's down to 90%. So the literacy rate has dropped, and the standard has dropped, okay? So it's a myth that people were uneducated before the founding of public education. So what is public education? Where did it come from? What is it? Well, I think there's two important stories you have to know about. I talk about them in Revealing School. One is Alexander the Great and his tutor Aristotle. Famous Aristotle was the tutor of Alexander the Great. Aristotle gave Alexander the Great an elite education, what we consider not classical education, I'd say a prep school education or raising children for greatness education. And it certainly worked. Alexander the Great had the confidence at a very early age. I think at like 18 or 19, he conquered the Athenians. He united the Greek states. And then he went on and conquered Prussia, the most powerful empire in the world. And then he went into India. And if his men were so tired of fighting, but he wasn't. He could have gone on. He was indomitable. He had a great education. Well, at any rate, later in life, he finds out that his tutor Aristotle not only is teaching other elites the secrets of his elite education, he's sharing it with other people. Alexander the Great finds out that Aristotle wrote a book. And Alexander the Great is so angry. He writes this horrible, nasty letter to his old tutor Aristotle. And it's like, hey, thanks for nothing. You know, that education you gave me that was like awesome and super elite and like gave me all the secrets to ruling the world. You gave it to everybody now because you wrote this stupid book. And like, thanks a lot. Now my education's worthless. Because an education held in common is essentially worthless. It gives you no advantage if everybody in the whole world knows the same things. Aristotle writes back, he says, don't worry. The common person isn't even going to understand the book without the training I've given you. It's worthless, this book, okay? And trying to reassure Alexander the Great that don't worry, you have an educational edge on your competition. So that's an important story, guys. This is thousands of years ago. This is before the time of Christ. Like, they understood the power of education, and the elites understood the importance of controlling knowledge and information and always having an edge. Then you have the story of Babylon. And again, we think of schools as educating people, right? You have Babylon, you have schools in Rome, and they educated slaves. This isn't where the elite sent their children to be educated. They were educated by the elites themselves. They were educated at their father's side. They were educated by tutors. And in the real world, you know, if you were a general, you'd take your son with you on campaign and he'd learn how to be a general at your side, right? The king often would have his children trained by elite tutors and then would follow in his father's footsteps. It was the slaves that were sent to school. This is really important to understand. When Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar, raided Jerusalem, conquered Jerusalem, he took the most promising children and he took them back and sent them to school to become slaves. And he educated them actually well. He wanted wise men, so he trained them up to be wise men. But they were educated to be Babylonian slaves to serve the king, for the king's benefit. So that was one thought. You educate these people and they make them serve you, okay? But it's very important because in our day and age, we didn't have a king that can compel everybody to be a slave. And you have these elites that run the country. And at this time, the American founding revolution, it's really important, and I can't get into it tonight. My wife has told me this can't be an 8-hour talk, okay? But it's not what you think. The people who found this country, they weren't these individual patriots. I mean, there was some of that and stuff. But this country was founded by elite bankers. They'd already taken down Spain and the Netherlands and established a Dutch Republic. Then they went over to England and overthrew the King of England and established a puppet monarchy today. Like, they have a king, but he has no power, okay? So by the time of the American Revolution, their king had no real power. Parliament ran everything. That was William and Mary, was the first king without power. William becomes king, conquers England, and immediately hands his power over to bankers and establishes the first Bank of England that's able to tax the people directly, like our Federal Reserve System. Okay? So it's really important to understand that. When they get to America, they're not these freedom-loving, like, patriot people that you think that they are. They're tyrannical, New World Order bankers who founded this country. And there are a lot of patriots, there's a lot of Christians who were involved in that revolution. I'm not saying that. That wasn't part of it. I'm saying that the people who funded this revolution were bankers. And right after they got done with the American Revolution, they went to France, and then they continued to stage revolutions around the world and overthrowing all the Christian governments. That's another talk. I'm almost getting into it. But it's important to understand that because as soon as they got control of the country, they started their schools in the 1850s. They started this movement to start schools and start educating the public. And of course, they sell it to us as they just want everybody to be smart and hold the democracy accountable. Education is so important to the democratic process, right? That's what they sold. But again, in this book, I reveal like the Rockefellers and the Carnegies who were involved in the education system. They had a totally different model. Okay, it was about harnessing. There's a book by Eddie Bernays. He's the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he talks about the importance of public education. That democracy can't work, basically, because the masses are stupid. It can't work unless the elites can educate the children in compulsory schools. So it was always about propaganda. It's really important. And it's also important to understand that the elites don't send their children to these government schools. Really important to understand that. I'm going to tell you where they send them to school in a minute. And you're probably wondering, wait, isn't this about homeschooling? Yeah, it's about homeschooling. We'll get there. Because so many homeschoolers, they pull their kids out of the school system and then they recreate school at home. Even though their children do better and they get some better values and it's a better environment, they recreate the curriculum. And so in the end, they get the same results, okay? But the elites in this country said, we're going to make the kids go to school and then we're going to throw the fight. We're going to make it look like equality. Like, hey, it's not just the elites getting their kids educated. Everybody's going to have an equal opportunity in America and you're all going to be able to get into the arena. That's the democratic way, the American dream. Everybody can get into the arena. But they create these two training grounds. One for their children called prep schools, elite prep schools. Your kids can't attend because they're $50, $60, $70, $100,000 a year per kid. So your kids can't attend. It's too expensive, okay? And they're not super democratic. The only time you can get in there free is if you're like the best in the whole world. Like you're the best violinist or something, or you're like a genius. Then they'll recruit you so that they can own you. So you know what I mean? So they can say, we made this guy. And they pull you into their society, their network of people. So they do recruit some people, but it's not democratic, okay? You have to either be super rich and one of them, or you have to be super talented, skilled, and then they recruit you, okay? And it's like throwing a fight. So it looks democratic because anybody can get into the arena. But I say it like this. It's like the kids in public school are being trained in yoga. They're being trained in the opposite of what they need, okay? And these elites are training their kids in MMA, and they have these special coaches and these health experts, and they're hitting the punching bags all the time. They got the jiu-jitsu masters, everything in the school. These guys are killers. They're training to fight, and your guys are over here like training in yoga in the public school system. And then when they get into the arena, it's democratic, but they always win. It's a rarity. It's rare that a public schooler can beat these prep schoolers. They just get annihilated. It's like me. I'm not a really big guy. You can see my funny ears. I've been wrestling and doing jiu-jitsu and MMA forever. And we'll have guys that come into the gym and, they're 250 pounds sometimes. And I can beat them, even though that naturally I shouldn't be able to. I mean, they weigh 100 pounds more than me almost. And they have every advantage in reach and size and everything, but I can crush them because I know jiu-jitsu. I know how to fight. It's about education. So these kids in these prep schools, they're being trained to rule the world, while your kids are learning gender studies and false history and common knowledge, which ends up having really no power behind it, okay? Then they neglect the subjects of greatness. They don't do any character training. We'll get into that. There's no leadership training. So we'll get into that. But it's important that you understand that model is designed to throw the fight. So if you're homeschooling your kids and you adopt that model, you're setting your kids up for failure. It's just the way it is. If you teach the same subjects, if you believe in the same philosophy and the same mode of socializing your children, like the public schools, you're setting your kids up for failure. The other important thing is to know that common knowledge, and the elites understand this very well, common knowledge is worthless. So there's two ways to keep people ignorant or to keep people down, right, with education. You can ban them from reading books like they tried to do the slaves. I think that's a thing. At least I read that it was. Probably in school, so who knows if it's true. But it was illegal to teach the kids to read. The other thing you do is you can put them into a school and that teaches all common knowledge, all of the same subjects. So there was a time when if you could read and write, people would pay you. Like that was actually a valuable skill. And you could get a job just knowing how to read, write, do arithmetic, accounting or something like that. It was a valuable skill because it wasn't common. It wasn't super common, I should say. Going way back in history, not in America, okay? So I don't want to contradict myself. But now they teach everything the same, at the same time, to the same level. So when everybody graduates high school, your teachers will tell you, if you don't go to college, you're fit to work at McDonald's. That's not exactly true, but it's telling you the quality of the education that you've received. And it's not like you didn't learn things. You learned some things. I mean, you took subjects, you did the classes, but everybody in America knows the same thing. So it's a benefit to the employees, or the employers. They get to hire a higher quality, let's say more educated person. but it's no benefit of you. If everybody in America, for example, learned how to be a doctor in the public school system, then being a doctor wouldn't be worth anything because everybody in America would know how to do it. So common knowledge is worthless. And that's why they continually push the Common Core, and they want a common standard for all the kids in the public school system, so that when they graduate, their education has no monetary value for themselves. It's essentially worthless. While the prep schools specialize, they hone in, they teach a totally different curriculum, okay? It's a totally different world in the prep schools, which we'll talk about in a minute. Another thing, a problem with public education that's so powerful is these habits. They understand the power of habits. The elites are always talking about like the law of attraction, habits and stuff like that. But habits harness you. And so you have a lot of parents, they're Christian parents, they put their kids in the public school system, they say, no, I'm going to do it on the side, I'm going to keep teaching them, I'm going to get them in the church and be involved, and they're going to make it through this. You don't understand. This is the background of educational psychology. The basis of it is Pavlov's dogs. It's these dogs being fed, which is a natural response, and they salivate, right? Hopefully you've heard the story. And then they salivate for the food, that's natural. And then eventually they ring the bell and they feed them. They keep salivating. Eventually they remove the food and they ring the bell and the dog still salivates. It's not something the dog controls. It's a compelled response that's been conditioned into them. This is classical conditioning. That's what the public school system is designed to do, classical conditioning. So while you're at home trying to counter all this stuff, they are conditioning your children to act and think a certain way, respond in a certain way, and it's like the drooling dog. It's not exactly like that because we can break habits, but once a habit sets in, it is a powerful thing. I don't believe in biting my nails. I've been biting my nails since I was a little kid. I've tried to break it. I think it's disgusting. It's such a deeply ingrained habit, I don't even think about it. The public school has your kids at 5 years old, and they want them earlier now, so they get to set these habits in early, and they get to go all the way through the forming years up to 18. And if you go on to college, it's more, up to 21. They're going to ingrain habits, thoughts, behaviors in your children that are impossible to break even if the kids want to, okay? This is very powerful. So just understand the danger of the public education system. You have to understand who's running the public education system. It's not you, it's not the school boards. It's a cabal. It's a centralized international cabal. It's why the schools over in England and throughout Europe, they teach the same thing basically as America at the same time. They promote the same agenda. Right now they're promoting the LGBTQ, they're past that. That's all been accepted. They're on to the transgender thing. But they're all centrally controlled. They all do the same thing. So even though you think, oh, it's democratic and we have a school board and we can vote, you see what they think of you as parents. They don't care about your opinion. The school boards, they are very well controlled. They're very well funded. They're very well organized. And they always lie to you. They tell you the opposite. When they started sex education, they said, we just want to teach kids about biology. We just want to prevent unwanted pregnancies and all this stuff, right? That's it. And most parents are like, oh, okay, I guess it makes sense. And we don't want our kids to have sex, but if they're going to have sex, they should have safe sex. And then look at where that sex education's gone to. And now they're promoting every form of degeneracy and sodomy and gender confusion and every disgusting thing through the sex education program. The other thing that happened is the exact opposite of what they said would happen. Abortion rates have gone up. Out of wedlock sex have gone up. Sex before marriage has gone up. It's all exploded. So you have to say, okay, they're incompetent. They failed. Or, as I show in this book, I prove it's more sinister than that. They never wanted those things. They wanted your kids having sex at an early age. They want to destroy the family. They're all about abortion. It's an industry. They make a ton of money off of it. They make a ton of money selling you guys, our children, sterilization. They make a ton of money off this stuff. They wanted your kids hooked on sex at a very early age. They can't say that to you because that sounds horrible. But they wanted that. Same with the DARE program. For whatever reason, we think of DARE as like the epic failure. There's a slight, excuse me, there was a slight drug problem. It was a drug problem. So the public schools decided they were going to implement DARE, a DARE program, to keep your kids off drugs and just say no. Like that's, and everybody's like, yeah, that's good, that's good. The DARE program exploded drug use, exploded it. Now you can say that DARE's incompetent. Or you could think that maybe the public school was promoting it. And I don't mean the teachers. The teachers never know what's going on. I'm talking about the people who control the education system. These are very bad people. And they educated children on drugs. Before that, I remember being in 6th grade. I went through the DARE program in like 6th grade. I had no idea about drugs. I had no idea about where to get drugs. It never occurred to me. Same with sex ed. I remember in 5th grade, we had sex ed, and it was like, that was the farthest thing from our radars. We didn't even know about that. I mean, we thought girls were cute and stuff, but the idea of like sex, it just wasn't even on our radar. They put it on our radar. Same thing with drugs. Immediately after that, what do you think happened? When you tell a bunch of kids, like, there's this thing out there and they're not supposed to do it, it's too dangerous and stuff, you have kids that want to try it. They're curious. They go look into it. And immediately kids started using drugs. Like that summer, right after the DARE program. So it's epic failure. Or the school's not as dumb as it looks. The people who run this system, they know what they're doing. Look how they're moving the country more and more left all the time. These are not incompetent people. You think they're incompetent. You're like, oh, look what they did to the economy. They destroyed the economy, these idiots. No, they didn't destroy the economy. They made a killing. They made a killing for themselves. Tons of money. They always increase their wealth. Things always get better for them. It gets worse for us. And we're just like, these are dumb people. They're because they like the opposite happens. No, but they're liars. That's what all this is they're liars. They're not incompetent. They put Biden in office. They're not incompetent. They know Biden's like a drooler, but he's not running the country. He's just signing off on their agenda. They didn't need anybody super competent. It's almost silly at this point. It's almost like they're just mocking us. Like, hey, I don't know. At any rate, school's very dangerous. It teaches false history. I have to go through that sometime. On Blue Man Academy, you'll see this. There's so many things you guys believe about the American Revolution, about the French Revolution, about World War I and World War II. It's totally false. It's propaganda. Finally, in the last few years, when I wrote Revealing School, the fake news thing wasn't even really a big thing. When I wrote this book, and I was trying to warn people, like, it's fake. It's all fake. It's fake history. Everything in the schools, it's like fake science. It's like all lies in the school system. Finally, people, I think, are starting to wake up to that, but I'm telling you, it's so deeply ingrained. It's like you're rebelling against the transgender thing right now. You can see that that's fake. You don't realize you've already swallowed this huge hook. The hook is so deep. You have like this much of it. And you're like, I'm not swallowing this, but it's deep in your throat, the hook. You have to pull the hook out. You have to give your kids a real education. You have to unschool yourself and your children. School's the most dangerous thing. So when we talk about raising children for greatness, the first principle is you have to bring your children home. You cannot allow the enemy to educate your children. You cannot allow it. You cannot allow the Babylonians to educate your Jewish sons, if you're a Jew, right? You cannot allow these people who hate you, these elites who treat you like cattle, human resources, touch your children. And let me tell you, like, they wouldn't let the public schools touch their kids. They wouldn't let them. We'll talk about a few public schools in a second that are exceptions that the elites put their kids in because they're public prep schools that are in there. We'll talk about it in a second. But for the most part, they won't do it. Look at Obama. He was totally against school choice for your kids because he knows because we need to invest in education and public school isn't broken. It can be fixed and all this stuff, right? And they were going to Common Core and that was going to revolutionize everything and everybody's going to be smart and we're raising the standards. And you can see that all failed, 10 years later or whatever. But, he was totally against school choice, but he wouldn't dare put his kids in a public school. They went to Sidwell Friends, a very elite prep school. They got a great education. And Obama also went to an elite prep school and got a great education. But when it comes to your children, common children who aren't wealthy or elite, they have to go to the public school system because we have to believe in our public schools, right? And that's how they do it. They're throwing the fight. So the first step to raising children for greatness is you get your kids out of the public school system. You can't win. Even if you can combat it and your kid comes out the other end, like they get good grades and stuff, you don't understand. Even if they get good grades, even if they're straight A and they memorize everything in the school, it's all worthless information for the most part. Like learning to read, it's good. You have to do it. It's like learning to tie your shoes. But nobody pays you for it anymore. Okay? But there are things you need to know. These are the subjects of greatness we're going to get into in a minute. And there's not enough time in the day to learn all the stuff in the public school system. Well, and then learn the subjects of greatness. And they know that. So school's a decoy. So at the very least, you wasted your entire education time. You wasted all that time. Even if your children come out the other end like kind of okay, they wasted those forming years. It's too late. Gone. And, okay. Trivial Pursuit, that's what the public school education is. That's why you can't go there. Because like I said, even if your kids come out with their faith, it's a trivial pursuit. I always ask this when I do talks. I say, how many of you, because homeschool moms, a lot of them are following the public school system, like the methods and the thinking, right? And I'm like, how many of you guys can name the 3 ships that Christopher Columbus sailed to America on? And there's always a bunch of hands that come up and they rattle them off, right? And then I ask them, I say, if you didn't know the name of the ships that Christopher Columbus sailed to America on, how would your life be any different? And it's crickets. Or somebody's like honest, like it wouldn't, because it wouldn't. It's worthless. It's trivia. Trivial means irrelevant, unimportant. Facts and information. Trivial Pursuit was a game. It became really popular on the game shows. They act like these guys are geniuses because they've memorized every baseball ending and MVP for the last 100 years. Like, what can that do for you except on a Trivial Pursuit board game? That's why a lot of times you think some of our leaders are idiots, like Trump or Biden or Bush. You think they're idiots because they don't know a lot of, facts and information necessarily, but they've been well educated in the subjects of power, and that's why they're at the top. Okay, but we're like, hey, they're so dummy. Bush went to college, got a C. Well, Bush probably understands that college is irrelevant and unimportant, and the best grade you can get is a C in college because you didn't waste your time trying to get the A, learning the irrelevant stuff, but you still got by. So I'm okay with a C student if you're in the public school system or in the colleges. Okay, and when they go to these elite colleges like Harvard and Yale, that's not an elite education at that point. I've talked about that in other places. The elite education happens in the prep school, and then that's just kind of like that's where they social network at these Ivy League universities, and they recruit for their families and stuff like that. They recruit all the geniuses, super smart kids around the country. They put them into these elite schools so that these elites who run the country can hire them up and work for them. But there's no real good education at Harvard. In other words, they're just recruiting the smartest kids and the elites, and everybody goes there for like social networking. It's not like they made them that way. Okay, they just recruit them. So that's why, so that's it. Okay, that's Revealing School. Guys, I didn't touch anything. It's a 470-page book. So important you understand this stuff. It's so important. There's things in here that will shock you. If you guys have ever read John Taylor Gatto's Dumbing Us Down, like, that's the ABCs. I read that book and I was like, wait, what do you mean? Like, okay, I accept that they're doing that, but how? This book is where it shows you how, and it will shock you. It will shock you what public education is. And then you'll fear it. Instead of mocking it and thinking it's stupid, you'll realize it's the most powerful, dangerous, best schools in the world. Okay? Best schools in the world. Better than the Babylonian schools. These schools have got it down to a science. These are not stupid people. They're doing exactly what they are designed to do very effectively. They wanted your kids to be dumb, and it's hard. Kids are creative. Kids are smart. When your kids come out the other end of public school, they don't ever want to open a book again. They hate learning. Learning to them is like pulling teeth. That's part of the process. They make sure that your kids not only are ignorant, but they'll never want to open a book, so they remain ignorant. And they get the final word in the public education system, right? That is part of the process. The people who train the dogs to drool, that's who's handling your children, okay? The teachers are not running the classrooms. I know many teachers. My mom is a teacher. They're not running the classrooms. They're dictated what to do. They're as frustrated as anybody. They don't understand why it's not working. Read this book and you'll understand why and who's behind the education system. Okay, that's it. Get your kids out of public school. You can't raise them for greatness if they're in the public school system. If there's no way out for you and you're a single mom and stuff like that, just understand what you're up against. And it's a Goliath situation, and I pray for you, and you have to do the best you can. But if you have any way to get your kids out of the public school system, it's the first step. Just by doing that, your kids will do better. Okay? It's like Leo Tolstoy said. He said that. The great Leo Tolstoy is like, compare uneducated children in any respect, morals, athletics, like anything. And the unschooled child is superior in every way. That was Leo Tolstoy. Okay. All right, so we're done with Revealing School. The next is once you get out of the public school system, you have to set up an elite education for your children. Educate them in the mold of the elite prep schools. And let me tell you, that's the number one mistake homeschoolers make. They pull their kids out of the school system that's all broken and everything, and then they just recreate it at home. And their kids do really well. They do better on the standardized test, which means that maybe they're just more standardized. They win all the spelling bees because that's super important, out there in the world with spell check. It's super important that you can spell words that you'll never use in your life. That's a hobby, okay? If you love to spell, fine, do spelling. But that's not an education, okay? That's silliness. And the homeschoolers win that all the time. I'd be impressed if you won the spelling bee, but sometimes to win, you have to lose. You have to pick what battles you're going to lose. We can lose spelling. All right. So how do you give your kids an elite education? And first, let me just explain to you what's going on with the public schools or the prep schools. I just want you to understand because sometimes people don't wear badges. Like, I'm a prep schooler, so you just think like we have this society and everybody kind of works their way up and stuff. I just want you to show how black and white this is. Okay? Our last 4 presidents, Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden, are all prep schoolers. All prep schoolers. Prep schoolers make up 0.5% of the population, you guys. It's not the 1%, it's the 0.5%. And they're our last 4 presidents. So that should tell you something. When you think of the great tech icon billionaires, like Elon Musk, right? He's the richest man in the world right now. Bill Gates is right up there with one of the richest people in the world. And Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, richest people in the world. These are prep schoolers, guys. You don't know that. Or you look at the college they went to and like, oh, I got to get into Harvard like those guys. Gates and Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard. They dropped out very early. Zuckerberg was halfway through his sophomore year, so a year and a half of Harvard. He didn't learn how to build his tech icon Facebook empire at Harvard. He learned it at prep school, and he was ready at 19 years old. He quit, and he went and founded the most powerful media empire, social media in the world. Okay? These are all prep schoolers. If you want to go to an Ivy League university, if you go through a prep school, you have a 35% chance of getting into an Ivy League university. To put that in perspective, if you have the privilege of going through a public school, it's 0.01%. Not 1%, 0.01. 1 in 10,000 public schoolers make it into the Ivy Leagues. 4 out of 10 basically make it into the Ivy Leagues from the prep schools. And a lot of those prep schools could probably get into the Ivy Leagues, but they don't go because maybe they go to their parents' alma mater or they go back to their state or something like that. I imagine it could be a lot higher if they actually wanted to go to a prep school. But about 35% of prep schoolers go into the Ivy Leagues. There are success stories that come out of the public school system. These are the Jeff Bezos, recently Justice Jackson, the newest African-American black justice, Supreme Court justice. She came out of the public school system. Don't be fooled. That is a public prep school. These are basically no more, by the way. These are being done away with. They've kind of been overcome by woke culture. But back in the day, 30, 40, 50 years ago, there were elite public schools. They were often in affluent communities, and they would take the public school funding, and then the parents would donate. They get all these grants and stuff, and they'd create a prep school. So in every other way, it's basically a prep school, but it still took public funding, so they're considered public schools. But Jeff Bezos and Justice Jackson, I want to point that out, they went to the same high school. So think about that. So it's not just like your normal high school. Like, it's a high school. It's a prep public high school. So that doesn't even count in the statistics of the prep schools. It's considered a public school, and yet I just want to say that probably should be put in the category of a prep school. When your list of like alumni, like famous alumni, is like pages and pages on Wikipedia, that should tell you something. And Warren Buffett is the same thing. He's like he's worked his way up. He's a common man. He worked his way up through the public school system. No, he went to basically a public prep school outside of D.C. D.C. is super rich. Lots of elites there. You have these neighborhoods that are super rich, and they have public schools that they basically run, and they're very much more. They're magnet schools, or they're very focused. They have a lot of the principles of a prep school education, kind of like a charter, but they're prep schools, but they're public. So even then, okay. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say is that there is this group of people out there that do so well. These aren't regular charter schools, though. These are like prep schools, basically, Janine. So I just want you to understand that there is this great education, and they're winning everything. These are prep schools, okay? It's not just random. It's not these different philosophies. If you take everything that they do in the public school system, the prep school does the opposite. Almost, it's just shocking, the difference. It's almost like it's rigged, and they know the difference because Obama's kids went to a prep school. He could have just duplicated, like mimicked what they're doing in the prep school and put it in the public school, and they could both do well. So they know the difference. Okay. I talk about that in this book, How to Give Your Kids an Elite Education. Thankfully, we don't have to do prep schools. That's a waste of money. It's $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. We can take those principles and apply them in our homes and actually do a better job. In fact, the princes, the old princes, the aristocracy, the nobles, they didn't go to school. They were tutored. They had private tutors. And a lot of these prep schools, for example, one of the advantages is low student-to-teacher ratio. A lot of times there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 kids in a class. Okay? You had that in your homeschool, all right? And it's not about the tuition, guys. The high tuition, you think that's a ton of money, but there are schools in New York where the students, I think this is a long time ago, 10 years ago, it's like $30,000 a student. That's close to a prep school funding. It's not about the funding. It's a different philosophy. Okay, I'm not going to get into the education part. That's the least important, guys, is the academics. It's the least important of the Raising Children for Greatness movement. If you want to give your kids an elite education, I'll talk about the principles. We teach the essential. We teach in layers so kids don't forget everything. I talk about that in Revealing School, how they have scientifically learning proof schools. That's what they've done. They've created learning proof schools. And you know this because after 12, 13 years of public education, there are kids who can't tell you who the first president was, even though they learned it. It's by design. It's a learning proof school. Okay, so it looks like you're studying all the time and you're busy and all this stuff and you're taking all these classes and you're cramming, and then you come out and you can't remember anything. You don't even remember the American Revolutionary War. You've seen these man of the street interviews. That's part of the process. Blue Manor Academy, that's where we give your kids an elite academic education in the mold of the prep schools. Okay, very powerful. The next thing you need to know is character. Character. You have to train your children's character for greatness. When we think of character training, especially as Christians, we're often like, well, we want to be honest. We want to give them good manners. That's okay. Like say please and thank you. And we assume that the character training kind of ends around 5 or 6 years old because it's just about politeness and kindness. You see this in the public school system. They do the niceness training, the tolerance. It's all about tolerance and the anti-bullying stuff. You see that in the public school system. When we talk about training character for greatness in the prep schools, you look at a guy like Obama, you look at a guy like Trump or Biden. These aren't necessarily people we think of as like virtuous saints, right? So when I talk about character in that sense, I'm not just talking about the virtues. I'm talking about a kingly character, a command presence, courage. And bad people can have that too. But okay, so we're not just talking about like godly character here, which we want. We're talking about the character virtues. For example, courage. That's just one example. Courage. The public schools are not training children in courage. Okay? The other thing you have to understand with the character training that's so important to an elite education, you have to understand it's not academic. Okay? It's body, mind, and spirit. The mind, the academic part, is the easiest thing to train. Like in fact, you don't even have to train it. There's not a kid in the world that needs to be convinced that courage is a virtue. Everybody wants to be courageous. Everybody dreams of being courageous. So there's no need to even educate that or convince, you know what I mean? Like tell all these stories, like here's why it's important to be courageous. Here's what courage is. Everybody knows what courage is. Everybody knows what a chicken is. Nobody wants to be the chicken. But why are so many people chickens? They haven't been trained. Their character hasn't been trained in spirit, body and spirit, but especially spirit. Okay? You have people today, okay, I'm going to give the example of the military. I was in the military, okay? When we jumped out of airplanes, I went through airborne school, jumped out of airplanes. You think, okay, people who are afraid of heights are going to have trouble jumping out of airplanes, right? Okay, every single person in the world is afraid of heights. Like, that's the secret. Everybody's afraid of heights. Some people just have no courage, so they just cling to the tree or the ladder, like they can't go up it because they're total cowards. But everybody's afraid of heights. I was terrified to jump out of the airplane. I don't know anybody that wasn't. Some people were like machos, they pretend they're not, or some people have already jumped out of planes, so they're used to it. So they look courageous. They're not afraid anymore. I got to that point too after you do it 10, 15 times. And it's like, okay, cool. It's fun. But you're terrified the first time. So the military has a system of training courage. When I went through Special Forces training, and just so you know, if you're new, I wasn't Special Forces. That's a Green Beret, Army Green Beret. I went through most of the course. I had a knee injury. I failed a patrol. But I went through like a year and a half of their training program. A year and a half. They train courage. It's one of the first things you do. They have you, like, for example, claustrophobia. Everybody's claustrophobic. So they have this tunnel, this little tube actually. You have to crawl down into it, and it goes downhill. So it goes downhill and then it kind of comes up, but it goes downhill so there's no light. You're basically crawling into the dark. And then it starts wide and it gets narrower and narrower. It's terrifying. And then they cram you in there with a bunch of people. So people are behind you and in front of you. And in the middle, you're like, you can barely breathe. It's tight. There's people behind you and in front of you, so you can't get out. It's claustrophobic, okay? But they know that by conditioning, getting you through that and getting you used to that, you won't panic. You'll have courage, even though you're kind of nervous about the claustrophobia. With heights, same thing. They get used to the heights, right? Anybody can gain courage over heights. It's very simple. Take a kid who's afraid of heights, put him on a ladder, one step up. Is he afraid? Have him jump up. No, he's not afraid. The next day, have him go up two rungs. That's it, 2 rungs. Get back down. And then 3 rungs. And you build up his tolerance to heights. And so he is able to overcome it. You can train courage. And they used to do this with the kings. I remember thinking that as a kid. I'm like, there's this battle between Henry and Richard for England. And they're two opposing armies. They're the night before they camp out, and they know that the next morning it's going to be a fight to the death. Imagine that. The next day, I'll either be the king of England tomorrow morning or I will be dead. That's what the stakes are. And yet both of those men, they wake up in the morning, they put their armor on, and they go out into the battlefield. That is courage. Imagine that. That didn't just happen. It's not just luck. What luck that the kings are courageous. Like, they train that in their children. They train that princess. That's part of the job. And those princes are ready to die. They're ready to fight and die. Not all of them. Sometimes kings panicked and fled. But, they were trained, courage training, okay? Same with the soldiers. They take random guys off the street, not necessarily any more brave. There's no bravery test before you get in the military because they know they can train it. They can train courage. You can train the virtues. But they don't in the public school system. They do in the prep schools. They do it all. They talk about the honor system. Loyalty. When's the last time you talked about loyalty with your kids? When's the last time anybody talked about loyalty? In the public school system, did they ever talk about that virtue? It's one of the most important virtues. You talk about these kings, like they had a loyal following. People pledged their lives to serve this king, and they meant it. They would fight and die. They had a strong bond of loyalty that made them powerful in the world. Does anybody even have that anymore? Even in families, is there any loyalty anymore? You have to train these character virtues for greatness if you want to be powerful. And they do that. Okay, so you got a guy like Trump or Obama. Obama's in a cabal, and they're loyal. And it's a cutthroat. I'd say it's kind of like the mafia system, but they understand the virtue of loyalty. I'm not saying they're good people. I'm not saying that if you have these character traits, you're a good person. Like, an evil person can be courageous. But they can't be great without courage. You can't be great without loyalty, okay? So that's what I talk about when I talk about training character for greatness. That's what I'm talking about. And there's so much more. So that's the next book, Courage. Or Character. Raising Children for Greatness, Character. You have to understand that. Nobody does. The churches don't know it. Look at the churches today. They're these limp-wristed latte drinkers. That's what I say. Like the boys who want to go into ministry. They're often limp-wristed latte drinkers. They're weak. They're kind. They're nice boys. They're nice boys. And if they're homeschooled, a lot of times we create what I call nice nerds. Our kids are super nerdy. They know all those irrelevant trivia that's not powerful. And then they're just so nice. They're so kind. And they get run over. And it's not a virtue. It's not a virtue. Christendom is not weak. It's not pathetic. Go look at some of our Christian kings. Look at Montel or Charlemagne or Constantine. These were strong, powerful men of courage. And they understood the merits of kindness. They also understood the merits of courage and aggression. And they had strong character. And today, our Christian world, we're being just overrun. We're being overrun. We don't even know how to organize ourselves. So at any rate, that's it. Okay, character is one of the things you have to train. You have to give your kids an elite academic education. You have to train their character for greatness. And now I want to jump to the last part. This is what sets everything apart, our movement apart. It's power. Okay, power. Power is probably the most misunderstood in the world because, again, the elites who run the world and run these democracies where the people are so weak and so unpowerful, okay? Even though we've been told power to the people, like it's all about that, you know you're not powerful. You know you're being overrun. They can tell you to wear a mask. They can tell you what to inject into your bodies now. They can tell you what to say. If you don't believe that women can be men if they say they are, or men can be girls if they say they are, you can lose your job. You're not empowered. There's no freedom in this country, okay? You're totally overrun. The elites have trained you to think of power as evil so that they can pursue power. And all of the good people, the God-fearing people, they become weak and pathetic. And they always turn the other cheek. There's a time to turn the other cheek. Like the good book says, there's a time for peace. There's a time for war. The Bible says that. But they've trained you that. They've convinced you of this maxim, which comes from a liberal, an elitist, enlightenment liberal, like French Revolution style liberal, who is attacking the church authority. And he's the one who coined the phrase, all power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, or something like that. I forget. It's almost it, okay? Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. He coined that phrase, and he made it feel like if you wanted to pursue power, you had to be evil. And so good people think, well, I don't want to be powerful, and they just check out. And that's what's happened. Christians are not powerful anymore. And they think it's a virtue. They think that it's virtue. And to pursue power, to want power, you must be evil. Okay? That's the first thing I address in this book. You have to believe in power. The Bible talks about, I didn't give you a spirit of a timidity, but of power. Like constantly talking about the power of the Spirit, the power of the kingdom, and the glory, right? God wanted us to be powerful. And power's not evil. And this is lie, that if you have power, it corrupts you. And everybody accepts that now. Everybody says that. Power corrupts. And whenever like some leader falls or does something wrong, say, well, we knew power was going to corrupt them. Absolute power corrupts. You know, we always say that. It's just this maxim. It's a total lie. It's the exact opposite usually. Or I could say it's irrelevant. I'll just say it's irrelevant, it's neutral, but I would actually say in our book I argue it's the opposite. Power often purifies you, which is a shock, so let me explain. I know this is radical. Let me explain. Okay, first of all, sin corrupts you. That's it. That's the only thing that corrupts you is sin. You have kings that were good, godly men, and they weren't corrupted. You have people in the street, okay, and if you believe this lie about power, go look at the people living on the street, like these homeless people who have no money, they have no position of authority. They're just total degenerates. Like, not even degenerates. Let's say they have nothing, okay? No power. They'll kill you sometimes. They rape, they steal, they're lazy, they do drugs, they're totally degenerate. They have no power, but they're very corrupt. You look at the prisons. The prisoners have no power. They're like slaves in the prison. And then look at the prison officials. Who's more corrupted? The people with accountability, the warden and the police. I'm not saying they can't be corrupted. All men can be corrupted by sin. But if the maxim is true, then the prisoners who have no power should be more pure and uncorrupted than the warden. Or parents should be more corrupt than their children who have no power and they have power. So when you become a parent, you became more corrupt, right? You became more prone to evil, right? When you became a parent because you had power and authority. It's not true. It's usually the opposite. Power can be very sobering. When I became a parent, suddenly you realize, like, I have responsibility for another person, another human being. It sobers you. You take some bad people sometimes. They always do better where their own children are concerned. We saw this at military school. I said this all the time. I went to military boarding school. I went to a prep school. I didn't even say that before, okay? And I was a sergeant. It was a military academy, kind of like what Trump attended. And we used to have this thing, like if you had somebody in your squad who's misbehaving, they weren't doing their room right or whatever, it didn't always work, but a lot of time it worked. You could give them authority. It's a horrible way to do it because it like rewards bad behavior. But you could give them authority. And it was amazing how it transformed people. Like I had this guy, he like wouldn't clean his room, kind of sassed me sometimes like back. It was getting him annoying. So I was like, hey man, like, will you be my corporal? And he was a tyrant. It was awesome. Like all of a sudden he was like the room cleaning Nazi. And he cleaned his own room now because he had to like hold up the standard. He couldn't be a hypocrite. And then he'd go inspect other people's rooms, like rip them apart. Like instead of sassing me all the time, somebody'd sass me, he'd get in their face because he's my corporal. It was amazing. Instead of corrupting him, it like reformed him. It was amazing. So power doesn't have to corrupt, guys. This is the most evil thing that the devil could have put out there, this lie, because it's made all the good people like allergic to power. Like they don't want anything to do with it. They don't want to even appear to pursue power. And it's made all the evil people naturally gravitate toward power. And so now we have the shift where Christendom used to rule the world. Like all the powerful kingdoms were Christian, including America at one point. It was mostly Christian. And now it's all flipped. We're so weak. At any rate. So the other thing I want to address is this idea that power is evil. And this is this book. This is a famous book. This is called Power. It's the 48 Laws of Power. It is by Robert Greene. Okay, this guy's part of the cabal. I've talked about these people. He's part of the publishing cabal. He wrote an evil book, and so of course it's a bestseller. He sold millions of copies. Everybody thinks it's a genius. It's a lie. It's a huge lie. And in this book, he basically takes like some wisdom from Aesop's fables. It talks about like evil in the world and all that stuff, and he says that that's the source of power. Like one of the examples he gives, I think one of the first laws of power. Oh yeah, it is. It's the first law of power is never outshine the master. Never outshine the master is one of the first laws of power. Robert Greene's book. It's a bestseller and made him millions of dollars, and he sold millions and millions of copies. You know, I'll never sell what he sold, but my book is real power. His book is fake. So his says never outshine the master. It's a law of power. And that's because, of course, the master will become jealous and he'll want to destroy you. And he talks about if you have to outshine the master, you have to destroy the master because he'll become jealous. And there's this, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a teacher. And I guess it depends who your master is. I'm a teacher. I train kids. I train my own kids. I'd be devastated if they weren't greater than me. I want them to be greater than me. Okay, I do oration. I'm teaching oration. If these kids outshine me, I love it. It means I'm a good teacher, and I'm happy for them. And these kids are. They correct me. I'm in coding club. My kid's son teaches coding club. I don't understand it. And these kids, like, I don't understand it. These 8-year-olds they get it. Like, we get done with lesson, I'm like, did anybody understand? They're like, yes. I'm like, huh? Like, I didn't get it. I didn't expect them to. They're outshining me. That's great. If your master is a good person, he would want you to outshine him. And when you do outshine him, just show respect. Don't be arrogant. Don't be haughty. Don't humiliate him. Or yeah, there'll be some tension. But it's a symbiotic relationship. It's reciprocal. Okay, I want my students to do well. It's a reflection of me. It makes me look good, and it makes them look good. We're one. It's exciting, especially as parent-master, parent-child relationship. Like, you want your children to outshine you. I want my son to do better than me in life. That's just natural. So what is this law about power, not outshining the master? And it teaches you how to conceal your intentions. Like, this is the cabal. This is how they operate. This is the devil's bag of tricks. It's cunning. It's evil. It talks about how to create like a cult following and keep your hands clean, the cat's paw, use other people to do your dirty work. You should read this book because this is how the cabal works in the world. These are these bankers, these behind the scenes that pull the strings, that use public education to give your kids an education and then make them stupid. And it was always to make them stupid, but they, under the guise of giving them an education, they indoctrinate them, make them stupid so that they don't have to compete with them. It's in the book. This is how they operate. They tell it to you right here. This is how they operate. Stir up the waters to catch fish. Like, it's an evil book. It's like written by Satan, and they call it the laws of power. So anybody who reads this book, if you're a good Christian person, like when I read this book, I was like, well, I guess I can't be powerful. Like, if that's the rules, you got to go to hell. You have to sell your soul if you want any sort of power in this world. It's a lie. I'll put my book up again. We're almost the same size, by the way. They're almost both 400 pages. I'll put my book of power up against his any day. I'll train my students for greatness, and he can train his with his laws of power and watch mine crush his. It's no comparison. God gave us the laws of power. I have 9, okay? And they're good, and they're godly, and they purify you, really. And you have to believe that goodness is more powerful than evil. If you believe evil is more powerful, that's how you get a book like this. And people do who pursue power like this, like Satan. They believe in evil. They believe in lying and false accusation and that sort of stuff. And there is some power in that. It's hurtful. And look how it's destroying the church and stuff right now. So I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's the devil's bag of tricks. Some of this stuff works. But the antidote to that is my book of power. I have the 9 laws of power, the 9 subjects of power. Okay? And mine's real power. And my power, you don't have to hide. You don't have to conceal it. You don't have to feel dirty about it. You should be proud of it, to have these powers. God gave you these powers, okay? So what are the 9 subjects of power that you have to train your children in? This is what sets apart your homeschool education from being, it's a good academic education. He'll get a decent job. He'll retire someday, to like, my children will rule the world like these prep schools. We're going to go toe-to-toe with these prep schools. We're going to take back land, power, territory for the kingdom of God. Okay, this is how you pursue power. Create a great family like the Medicis or something. Okay, that was a great Christian banking family, super powerful in Europe for a long time. This is how you do it. So what are the 9 laws? And I don't have to hide these and be like whisper. Like, I know, like when I used to have this book on the shelf, I always want to hide it, people, because it's evil. You like don't want to reveal it. Like, I'm pursuing power by stabbing people in the back and you're manipulating people. Play to people's fantasies. That's Robert Greene's idea of power. Play to people's fantasies, right? Okay. Thankfully, you can put this book on the shelf and feel good about it because it's godly power. And we realize that any pursuit of power outside of God and outside of virtue is futile. You'll be the least in hell if you pursue power that way. So it's not good. It's not everlasting. All right. So what are the subjects? Youth. People don't understand youth. I talk about this in Revealing School. You have to understand what's going on in our education system. You're on the 19th wave of propaganda. They have with evolution, the theory of evolution, they've made you think that children are retarded. There was this this idea, it's totally debunked, but they still teach it in the public schools now, that you basically start off, you go through all the phases of evolution. So you start off as the amoeba, and then you become like a fish. And this is debunked now with ultrasounds and stuff, but they used to believe this and teach this. And this theory of education that they promote in the public schools is based on that theory. And they basically said that then you're basically like a chimpanzee, is like a toddler. And then by the time you get to the teenage years, you're a Neanderthal. And so you're like, oh, and you just want sex and you want to eat, and like you're just a Neanderthal. Your brain doesn't function properly. And then you become, 21, 22, you become a human being. You go through the phases of evolution. And so we've kind of written childhood off. You have to understand the power of youth. The power of genius that can only be found in youth. Well, that's the next one. But there's this thing, they used to say that the age of like perfection was 30 years old. And then there's a window. But 30 years old is the age of perfection. That's why they say Jesus is probably crucified at 30 years old. Like, so something about that age is perfect, because you still have much of your youth, but you start to have some of the wisdom of old age and tempered a little bit, but you're not so weak and old that you've lost that fiery courage, right? Whatever. So they have like that, the golden age is what they call it, the age of 30. But many people, by the age of 20, like they were the most powerful. I mean, there was just something, I talk about this a little bit in my book. I talk about it a lot in my book. The youth, like 17 to 27, it's the years of power. And these kids aren't set up to achieve any sort of power, because they're 17, they're still sitting in a desk, drooling, learning irrelevant subjects, planning on going to college to learn irrelevant subjects, and then become the slave to debt. So that's how these kids are set up today. But I'm telling you, back in the day, I give the example, one of the most famous examples I give is Africanus and Hannibal. Hannibal, this young youth, like the Carthaginian Empire has been ruled, and Hannibal's father has like been defeated by Rome, and Hannibal comes along and he's like, I'm going to invade Rome. He's just so the audacity. You can see all the old men in the room like, don't do it. Like the Romans will stop us. This guy's a youth. He can't even fathom his mortality yet. Okay, this is powerful. You may think it's foolish, but it worked. It was powerful. He was a youth, and he's like, I'm invading Rome. And he just invaded and terrorized Rome, and all the older Roman generals were defeated. In fact, there was an uncle and there was a father, and they were both killed. They were well-trained, well-experienced generals. They're both defeated by this youth named Hannibal. And you think that in war, like, wisdom would win, but it doesn't. The ferocity, the immortality of youth is indomitable. And so basically, Hannibal goes back to Carthage, and the Romans are like, hey, does anybody want to take an army back over there to fight this guy? And nobody wants to. All the wise generals are like, no thanks, because I could get killed or I could lose and bring shame to myself. So the only guy that can beat this guy is Africanus. He was the one whose uncle and father had been killed by Hannibal's men, been killed in combat with Hannibal. So this youth's like, I'll go. He's in his 20s. And he takes an army back. And now Hannibal's older now, aging, a little bit older. He's lost his youth. Now you have Africanus, inexperienced. I mean, he's experienced, but not as experienced as these older generals and stuff. And he's just so naive and indomitable. He goes over there and he defeats Hannibal. Youth is powerful. That's why they say war is a young man's game. Like Alexander the Great. He had no right to attack the Persians. He was outnumbered. I don't remember. Let's say 10-1. But he was just totally outnumbered. But he can't even see it. He's a youth. He's ferocious. He cuts right through the line of the Persians. And Darius, the older, wiser Persian king with the bigger army, is terrified and runs from this youth. That's why David had to be a youth. And King Saul, the older Saul, he couldn't stand against Goliath anymore. He couldn't believe it anymore. He had no faith. David's anointed by God. He has to be a youth to face that Goliath. It doesn't occur to him he could die. He's God's hand. Like, he goes out there. It's a youth. There's power in youth, and the youth is totally wasted. You have to tap into the power of youth. It's because once it's gone, it's gone. I know they're lying, and you can have like a young mindset, and the law of attraction, and all this stuff that these older people tell them, and they work out, and they get Botox. Like, it's gone. They try to be young. They try to do crazy things like the midlife crisis, but you'll never be a youth again. Don't waste it. Genius. I don't know how long I've gone. My wife said I'm not allowed to talk so long anymore. It's like, you go too long, people get weary. Genius, I try to tell people this, you guys, you can create a genius. And that's a huge advantage. It's a huge advantage. You cannot compete with a genius. You just can't. But you can create a genius. I give this example. I talked about that last week, so I don't want to get too much into it. But read my book. I promise you can. If you can't, you can still create like a super, super, super smart, like really talented kid. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the world to be like on a high level, but you have to start young with early education. This is why preschool and all that stuff is such garbage. It's such a waste of time. When this kid should be developing genius, that opportunity is stolen from them. But you have people, just to give a few examples, like Mozart and Beethoven. It's a perfect example because Mozart's father is an aging composer. He's been doing music his whole life. So if anybody is going to be a genius in music, it should be him with training. He has thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of music and experience. But you know what he does? Instead of working on himself, trying to become a greater composer that's ever lived, he looks at his son and says, that's the guy, that little 3-year-old, I'll make him the greatest composer the world has ever seen. And he creates Mozart. Now, what are the odds? Like, is that a coincidence? It's just 1 in a billion, like, odds that he just randomly had this gifted kid who was born that way as a genius in music, and then it was born to a composer's son, and it's important to know that he picked his son. He knew there's a better chance of genius in training genius in that 3-year-old than training himself to be a genius at his age, with his age and experience. Why? Because once the brain is wired, it's too late. It thinks in different patterns, okay? The best example I can give for this is somebody who learns a language. They're fluent in their language in another country. They come to America and they learn English. And they might study English for 10, 20, 30 years. They've been speaking it. And then their 8-year-old speaks better English than them. I know of people like this, okay? That have, I don't want to say it because maybe they get offended or something, but... Well, my daughter, my wife, for example, she's kind of like a first-generation American. Her father comes from another country, and he still has an accent, and he's been speaking English longer than her. It's not an offensive thing. It's just his brain was wired for another language, right? Her brain was wired for English, so she speaks it pure. It's the same thing with genius. Before the brain is wired, if you wire it a certain direction when those kids are young, you'll think at a higher plane. The other person can never unwire their brain to think. It's like if you learn chess at 30. Or you start learning art at 30 or 40 years old, and you study for 10 years, you'll never be as good as the 3-year-old when they're 13. You've lost the opportunity for genius because that 3-year-old's brain is going to be wired in art, and it'll think at a higher plane. You can never get there, okay? I know I talked about that last week, so I'm done. Okay, I can see people are checking out now. Hey, Natasha, good to see you again. All right. Society is one of the other subjects of greatness. Of course, it depends on what kind of society. Evil has a society. It's not even talked about in Power because it's just a silly book. But the Cabal understands society. They have the Cabal. Okay, they have these secret societies all over the world, and they're very loyal to each other. It's an evil kind of loyalty. It's not based on love. It's based on fear and destruction. They're the ones that set up the fraternity system, like Skull and Bones, that was tied to the Freemasons originally. That'll be in the final book that I write, okay? I've talked about that other places. They have a loyalty, though. It's based on fear. Love is better than fear. No matter what Machiavelli said in The Prince, okay? Love is stronger than fear. The loyalty I have for my children is so much stronger than the loyalty I'd have to the Cabal, right? Even if they could kill me. Like, I would do, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to understand society and how to grow a powerful, loyal society to help you. We as individuals can accomplish no great thing on our own. Elon Musk, even if he's super smart and genius, like, he couldn't have built these rockets or any of this stuff without his team of geniuses, engineers, right? It's important to understand how to effectively develop society. This is another reason public school is so devastating. You send your kids in there and they create a society based on all these superficial and stupid things. You're taking some of the most degenerate kids from the most degenerate families, you put him in there, and he's cute, so she likes him, and now you've got a mess on your hands, and all of a sudden your kid's like, your daughter's dressed in these fishnet stockings and she thinks she's a vampire and stuff. It's like, what the heck happened? Well, you pretended society wasn't a big deal, or you were so democratic they could pick their own friends. Well, they don't pick their own friends in school. They get sorted into some sort of social hierarchy based on their popularity and the way that they look and how much money they have or whatever. And they're forced into a society, and then they adopt the customs of that society. The prep schools are very smart. They take the best kids, the most elite, powerful kids from around the world. They put them in a school together so they can social network. And then they go out and they recruit the best kids, like the brightest kids from the public school system, put them into that prep school so that they can network with each other, and they create this powerful cabal that they hire each other, they work together like in society. We need that, and we don't even pay attention to that anymore. That's a source of power, you guys. It's important. I talk about in one of my books, like I think it's in Power, the standard should be like, who will fight for me and who will I fight for? You can have social acquaintances, But when you pick friends, you should know that that friend will come to your aid. Your friend is an ally. And also you'd want to come to their aid. Like, I will fight for this person. This is my loyalty. Build a strong society. That's one of the powers. Leadership is another power. Not management, not like student council in public school. That's nonsense. That's not leadership. Leadership is one of the biggest chapters in this book. You can't take a leadership course. It's something you have to start developing when you're young. The power of leadership. You look at those kings, man. They could lead. You look Caesar, the confidence, the command presence he had. Caesar, when he's a youth, he's captured by pirates. They find out who he is. They want to ransom. He has such a command presence, such confidence in his youth, right? But he's been raised for greatness, Caesar, and that leadership. And he's, if you know the story, he's like insulted by the amount that they want for ransom. He's like, don't you know who I am? Like, how dare you? Like, triple the price. And then he's like, besides, like, as soon as you hand me over, I'm going to go hire a ship and hunt you pirates down and kill you. And these pirates are like, whatever, this is like a youth. Like, they don't believe him. And they pay off the ransom. They hand Caesar over. Caesar goes and he gets men, hires a crew, and they hunt down the pirates and he crucifies them on the beach. He was a great leader. He crossed the Rubicon. Nobody but Caesar could have crossed that Rubicon, I think. Like, he'd been trained for greatness. At the moment, he knew how to lead men. Super powerful. Command presence. Master the art of oration. That's part of leadership. We don't teach any of these things. You can't take a public speaking course. There's things that the public speaking courses in college won't make you a good speaker. You know that because you've taken them. They're just totally worthless. You have to master the art of oration, and that's part of leadership. Leadership is the most powerful thing, you guys. You can do nothing great and powerful without leadership. You can't. You're one man. You take the strongest man in the world, he might have the strength of 3 or 4 men, let's say. That's nothing. We have billions of people on the planet. You're relatively weak. But you take a leader, even like a guy like Trump that you don't like, or a guy like Putin or somebody like that, he has a massive following. He's super powerful. Super powerful because he's a leader. And you can have good leaders and bad leaders, okay? But it is a power. Another power that they don't teach in the public school system is the power of beauty. Now, as soon as I say the power of beauty, people are like, oh, like being hot, like you can manipulate people. Like, no, I'm not talking about, yeah, physically you can be beauty, and that's a source of power. But I'm talking about the power of art, expression, beauty in the world. We respond to that. It's the most powerful thing. It's not like a dog who just wants to eat and mate and stuff like that. Like, we respond to art. Right now, the liberals, the leftists, the New World Order, the cabal, they run the art. They own all the art in the world. They fund the art. They run Hollywood. They take evil things and make them appear beautiful. And it works because people respond to art. You have to teach your children art. Whenever I talk about, like, we're going to have a class on art at Blue Manor Academy, people think about drawing. They think about painting or drawing. That's a type of art. But that's not art. Every person who wants to be great or raise their children for greatness should study the principles of art. Color theory, design, stuff like that. Artistic expression is powerful. It's the expression of beauty. People respond to it more so than logic. In our homeschool worlds, like homeschoolers, we love to be like nerdy, and our kids memorize the logical fallacies and everything like that. And that's great. That's academic. That's great. Okay, it's good. It loses to art, and Hollywood knows this. I mean, you can use both. I'm not saying it's irrelevant to learn logic. That's part of oration, but understand art. Art is more powerful than logic. We're emotional creatures. Study art. The next one of the 9 is family. Family is more powerful than the cabal. Family is more powerful than Skull and Bones and these secret societies, the Freemasons. The Freemasons had nothing against the family, and that is why they've done everything in their power to break up the family. They've done everything in their power to destroy the family. I'll talk about that another night. You wouldn't believe it. Okay, No Fault Divorce came from the communists, Freemasons, when they took over Russia, the communists, okay? And the first thing they did is legalize abortion and no fault divorce. They knew that the family was their mortal enemy. When you look at the kings, it wasn't the kings. The kings are just families, by the way. The monarchy, they're just families. And those powerful families were Christian, and they ruled Europe for a long time. And they said, we have to destroy the monarchy. We have to destroy family if we want to rule these people. All those things, the natural loyalty of children is to the parents. That's natural. So when your teen is in public school and they're super rebellious and they're defiant, they become like your enemy, that's unnatural. That has been conditioned by the media and the schools and the elites who run the country. That's totally unnatural. The son is totally loyal throughout history to the father. Almost totally loyal. There are exceptions, of course, right? You always have your Cain. But they've attacked the family for a reason. They know it's a source of our power. It's a source of good, godly power. And the power of the family destroys the 48 laws of power, okay? You don't have to never outshine the master or master your motives when it's your father, because he loves you. He wants the best for you. He's happy to pass his crown to you when the time is right, okay? Family's powerful, and that's why they've done everything in their power to destroy family. You have to tap back into real family. The churches can't help you with the family. They can't help themselves. When I went to Boise Bible College, Christian college, university, they trained preachers and stuff. When they taught about marriage and family, they talked about, there was this book called His Needs, Her Needs. And it was about how if we want to have strong families, we need to meet each other's needs. So this is the communist worldview. This is all just about relationship and needs. And, men needed more sex and women needed financial security and all this stuff. That's nonsense. That's a total garbage lie. That has nothing to do with marriage. Marriages have managed to live through poverty and all sorts of trauma and war for thousands of years. It's only in our time that credit card bills can create so much anxiety that people get divorced, okay? That's because our marriages are so weak these days. So I want to reintroduce you in power to what family is, what it's designed to be, and how powerful it is. Your family should not be your enemies. It should be your closest society. And then final power is the power of religion. Again, the elites have a religion. It's Satanism, and I'm not joking. And they call it Kabbalism or something, or they call it being spiritual, or whatever. And I'll talk about that some other time. They have their religion, and they desperately attack true religion, Christianity. They hate it. The first thing they did when they took over countries was a separation of church and state. And we've been taught that that's a good thing. They knew that the religion was indomitable, like the family. They couldn't beat it. They had to destroy it. They had to separate it. They had to undermine it. They relentlessly attack religion because they know it's a source of great power. And you have to understand what true religion is, where it comes from, why it's powerful, and raise your children up religiously. Even in our time, we won't even say religious. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Or I'm not religious, but I believe in Jesus or something. No, you are religious. You should be. If you're Christian, you should be religious. Religious is just relationship with God on his terms. The New World Order wants you to think you can have a relationship with God on your terms. You can go pick your own church, and you can, whatever works for you, and you can set up your own rules, and you can pick and choose your religion. So when we say religion, we're just talking about relationship with God on his terms. And it's very powerful, the power of prayer. We don't believe in that anymore. I mean, we kind of say it, but we don't really believe in it anymore. Religion is power. So those are the powers, guys. I don't want to go any more. I just wanted to introduce those to you. If you're new to this group, if you're new to this movement, I know I went long. My wife's like, people can't listen that long. Don't do it. 5-minute clips. I can't do it. I'm not capable. I want you to know what we're doing. Yeah, I went through the prep school system. I have training in elite military schools. I'm going to build the greatest academy the world's ever seen. And your children are invited. And we're going to create a society, a powerful society, and raise powerful families. And we're going to start to take back this world. I want to reintroduce wisdom. I didn't say wisdom. Wisdom is one of the subjects of greatness. I forgot about wisdom. Believe it or not, there's like a wisdom curriculum you're supposed to learn, like Aesop's 2,000 Fables. That's a wisdom curriculum that the elites used to teach our children. They don't teach that in schools anymore. It's all like science and math, all stuff. What about wisdom? Wisdom is more important. They don't teach that anymore. So I talk about the wisdom curriculum. They want you to think everything is relevant, every lifestyle is equal. No, some are wise and some are foolish. And so that's another thing. But if you want to know more, I highly recommend you read the books. You can read them in order or out of order, because the way I did it, they're independent books. So start wherever you like. If you still don't think public school is one of the worst things that can happen to your child, then start with Education, Revealing School. It's a big book, but I've had people read it in a weekend. I mean, it goes fast. It's exciting. It's terrifying. It'll open your eyes. It'll open your eyes. Character training is maybe not as exciting, but I think the way I teach it, like with Kurt and stuff, the way I tell it, it's interesting. It's exciting. And you'll finally figure out like how to raise respectful kids. All this new age stuff that they teach is like the antithesis of what you should do. This love and logic nonsense, just look where it's led. I promise you, I debunk that. I defend corporal punishment in here. People have said that they've never heard the case for corporal punishment laid out like this. It's the most powerful case. They're like, I get it now. I'm not just hitting it. Like, They've led us into so much foolishness. They want you to drug your kids so they can charge you a fortune for your whole life, thinking your kid has some sort of mental disorder because you won't properly discipline them. So they want you to drug them, then pay for counseling, and they exhaust you with parenting. After the age of 7, you shouldn't have any behavior problems with your kids, or very minor ones, if you do it properly. It's not that hard. I talk about that in here. Discipline's the biggest chapter in the book. Read it. It's so powerful. It's so important. I love this book. My favorite chapter is contentment. And you think, contentment, doesn't that just sound boring? Boring? No, it's the best chapter ever. It's probably the one that affected me the most. It's the only chapter, even as I think about it, I get teary-eyed or something. It's the most powerful. Powerful chapter. Joy. Don't forget about joy. The power of joy. You need joy in your life. You have to have joy. Sometimes we forget about joy, especially people who are like pursuing greatness. It's all work and grind. We forget to have joy. Really good book. Really powerful. Education, that was the second book in the series. It's the thinnest book. It's academic education. But understand what it takes to give your children an elite education. Today I say we raise children in Neverland. Children who never grew up. We've made childhood a cult. The elites have told us that. They made movies. They worship childhood. Keep them young. Keep them ignorant. Keep them stupid. Lie to them about Santa Claus. That's childishness. That's Neverland. The purpose of childhood is to create strong adults, to raise them up for greatness. It's not play. Children don't even want to play. They don't even really want to play. Back in the day, like play is a version of training. Training for the real world. Like children back in the day, they'd get wooden swords, not to play with, to learn how to sword fight without stabbing themselves to death, right? Or they'd work, today we give them plastic food. Like little girls, they want to cook stuff. We give them plastic food. The kid's like, what can you do with this? They play for 5 minutes. Like they want to bake. They don't want baby dolls. They want a baby sister to love on. And they want the real thing, but we've exchanged that with toys to keep them in Neverland. So this is an important book to read too. It's not just academics, this one, guys. This one is like the foundational philosophy of what it means to raise children for greatness. And then power is the game changer, guys. Power is where you put yourself in the history books. You raise a dynasty. And it's an important thing. God works through families. You look at Abraham, the Israelites, that's a family. A powerful dynasty. You look at the kings of Europe, the great Christian families. Charlemagne, he came from, I forget his name, the Hammer. I think he was the grandson of the Hammer. I just forgot his name. And you don't even know who he is. We have great Christian heroes people have never even heard of. They've only heard of like the martyr heroes. My mind is just totally blank. Who are the guys that went to South America and got speared and stuff? We learn about those kind of heroes these days. Gladys Aylward. Those kind of heroes. We forget that we had great warrior kings. Oh, it's going to kill me. It's going to kill me. Who's the Hammer? Does anybody know who the Hammer is? It's not Thor. No, he's the Hammer. He saved Europe. You guys don't know who he is. I forgot his name. The Hammer. He saved Europe from the Muslim invasion. They invaded Spain. He's a great French mayor. I think he was the mayor of Paris or something. Charles Martel. The Hammer. Charles Martel. You don't even know who he is. Kids know about Spider-Man. That's another one. Raising Children in Neverland. Their heroes are like Spider-Man and Batman and Superman. Like, what can that do for your kid? And you haven't heard of Charles Martel? He saved Christendom. The Muslims invaded Europe, so you know. They took down the Iberian Peninsula. They had Spain. They had all that land. And they would continue to fight for that land back until 1492. But the invasion ceased with this guy, Charles Martel. He ended the invasion. Great conqueror, called the Hammer. Great Christian king, called the Hammer. Or Richard the Lionheart. Great kings. And you've never even heard of them except in Robin Hood. And your kids don't even know about him. Okay? Charlemagne. I hope your kids know all about Charlemagne. Oh, no, because they don't teach that in public school. They don't teach it in public school. So, I don't know where I was going with that. I don't know. At any rate. So read the books. Read the books. Understand the philosophy. The truth is, I have the academy, Blue Manor Academy, but without your cooperation, you cannot raise children for greatness without parents. You can't do it. Or a great tutor, and you are the tutor. So I need your cooperation. A big part of this movement is educating parents. Okay, our academy has the books on the academy. I have hundreds of hours of video for parents to teach them how to raise their children for greatness. Like, I can't do without you. And then join Blue Manor Academy. It's $10 a month right now. That's nothing. compared to a prep school education. We're building it. It's not perfect. I will raise the price eventually, but this is your opportunity to get in, and I need your support. There's nobody else. I have no backers. I paid for this all out of my pocket. I've sunk tons of money and thousands of hours into it, and it's worth it, and I need your support. So if you're new to the group, please consider joining the academy. It's not perfect. It's full of bugs, but we are building a great society. Think of it like the early days of Rome. Think of it like the Pilgrims coming across in the Mayflower. They're about to start something great, a great civilization. I got that. It's my ear cleaner. I'm waving my ear. My wife's going to love that. We're about to build something great. Get in on the ground level, okay? Support me and I can build this thing for you. You know, if you've read the books, you know it. This is in my head. This is my life's mission, my life's work. You know I can build this for you, but I have to have your support to do it. I feel like Caesar, but I have no army. Like, you know what I mean? It's horrible. I need your guys' support, and we'll build this. If you guys have any questions, is the academy only for older kids, though? My son is 5. No, it's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. No. So we started off as early education. I believe in genius. Please read the book, Power. Genius starts in early education. We want kids started at 2, 3 years old. We were an early education company for 10 years. We just started getting into middle school, barely. Actually, we're up to 6th grade. We're going to high school. No, we're an early education company. So we were preschool in the beginning. And you have to start your children young anyway. So yeah, no, definitely get your kids on there. And it's getting better and better and better. We have Kids Teach Kids. Supposedly my house is under contract. I didn't get the earnest money yet, but it's under contract. I'll be taking a good chunk of that profit, putting it into Blue Manor Academy. So we are growing this thing. And get on early. And I'm going to share a video tomorrow. I want to share this video. I stumbled on it in my archives. I was organizing my stuff on the drive of my daughter when she's like 2 years old or 3. It's amazing what they can learn. I'm flabbergasted. I'll show you the video. We just did like this little promotional video when she's a kid. I haven't seen it in 10 years. And that's Emma. It's amazing. It's amazing what you can accomplish. And anyway, I hope you believe in it. If you guys have more questions about it, I know this is far out. I know this is contrary to everything that you've learned when you read these books, but I lay the case out. And this is ancient. This isn't my new idea. This is like ancient wisdom I'm reintroducing that the cabal knows. And that's why they keep it from you. They want your family in chaos. They want you poor. It's like a fight. It's one thing to train for fight and to be the best. It's super hard because the range of human potential is pretty close. Like you take me, I'm not that much slower than the fastest guy in the world. Okay, in the Olympics, sometimes races are decided by a few seconds. So the range of human potential is very close. So there's 2 ways to do it. You train extra hard, super hard, or you make sure that the other guy isn't training, right? You throw the fight, you cheat. And that's what they're doing. They're throwing the fight. When you get a hold of this stuff, you'll know how to raise a great family. I didn't even talk about wealth. It's one of the 9 powers. I missed a bunch of the powers. The power of wealth. I'm not talking Dave Ramsey. He's okay. I'm not talking being an entrepreneur. I'm talking about how to build wealth, maintain wealth, pass wealth on generationally. So you have like the great families of Europe. They were very good at this. They were the masters of this. Today, the Rothschilds are the masters of this. They know how to do this. Where they send us like Dave Ramsey and entrepreneurial Shark Tank kind of stuff. And yeah, you'll do better than somebody who's not doing anything maybe, but you won't build powerful generational wealth you can pass on. I talk about that, and guys, I'm living it. I want you to know I'm living it. This isn't theory. So many people write these books and they make great arguments, but I'm living it. When I left high school, I had nothing. I had nothing. I think I had $100. I had to live on a buddy's floor for a while. And I went to college, took out some loans. One semester of college is all I could afford. And then I went back later with some more loans and stuff. And we built wealth. I've been able to build wealth. I'm not a billionaire or anything like that. But I've lived it. Okay, with my kids, raising children for greatness. You see these experts, they write these books and stuff like that, and then their kids commit suicide, or their kids are all on drugs and have all these disorders because they can't do it. Their methods don't work. Look at their kids before you take their advice, okay? My kids, you meet them, they're very well, they're intelligent, they're smart, they're respectful, people comment on it, so I live it. I talk about raising champions, okay? I took my kids to a chess tournament, okay? I went up against the grandmasters. They have the grandmasters that teach chess in the prep school. There is a prep school in Idaho. Their kids came to the chess tournament. Everybody came to the chess tournament, and we won the state championship in 3 grades. 3 of my kids in the same year. Okay, I did that. Chess isn't that important. I love chess. It's good. It's not that important, but I did it. I wanted to prove that we could do it, that we can win. I went up against the experts, okay? I'm not a grandmaster or anything like that. My methods work. So, I'll take my kids to jiu-jitsu. I want to take 4 of my sons to a jiu-jitsu tournament, and we'll win gold. And we'll be going up against, the black belts. They run the gyms, their coaches, their kids. Like, we'll be going up against them and we'll win. So it works. My discipline. I'm not like just blessed with the most nicest, amazing kids. I've had some real terrors. We usually work that out. If you follow my method, by about the age of 7, they're very respectful. I haven't had a kid disrespect me intentionally past the age of 7. I've had a few kids maybe like sigh, which is a huge disrespect to me because that's my standard. But I would never have a kid tell me off or throw a tantrum or anything like that past the age of 7. I can't remember. Yeah, I mean, my kids are well disciplined, I'll say it. And I'm not trying to brag, I'm just telling you, we know the method. And I didn't just invent this method. I'm not some genius who's like trying to sell you some breaking program that nobody knows about. It's like everybody knew about this until the advent of the elites, the New World Order taking down France and the Enlightenment, and then the age of public school where they made everybody retarded. And now these mothers, they don't even know how to like take care of their own children. They're just totally lost, and they just look to the experts for everything. Like, I'm just reintroducing you to ancient wisdom, okay? And I think I present it very well in the book, so you get it. Like, you understand why corporal punishment is so important. It's the best form of discipline. Discipline is totally a lost art. It's totally a lost art. And that's why they're drugging the kids. They just drug them now. And then the kids go crazy. They shoot up the schools. They're so violent. They're children of wrath. They're out of control. And this kindness, like gentle parenting, it doesn't create kind, gentle children. They're children of wrath. Where you look at my kids, like they can hold their little baby sister, and they're so kind and gentle. They know how to take care of other kids and stuff like that. And then you look at these other kids who like have their positive parenting methods, or these other parents, and look at their kids. They're violent. They're angry. They're disrespectful. So I guess what I'm saying is this works, and I'm trying to prove it and live it so you guys can see it. I'm not just talking. I'm not just writing good, interesting books or cutting edge new stuff. It's like I'm living it, and you guys can live it with me, and we'll build this movement. It's exciting. Somehow you found it. I don't know how you found it. We're tiny, but somehow you guys are here for a reason. So, all right, guys. I will see you next week. If you're new to the group, just welcome. I just wanted you guys to see the whole thing, the picture of what we're building. I'll go back to specific topics. If you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. I work for you. Your children's success is my success. If your children are doing well, let me know. If your children are having trouble in the academy, let me know. Like, you are the product. I have to be able to pass this on for the academy to be great. I need to raise up some champions to take these kids on. And so anyway, thank you guys so much. And let me know if you have other questions and stuff, okay? I'll see you next week. Bye.